Well, I came from the Lidditz Mennonite Church, and my main reason for leaving the church was there was a division starting with a Sunday morning service, and no one knew it was going to happen, but so it happened very suddenly. Back in at that time, in the early 1950s, the men still sat on the one side, the women on the other side, and some of those couples with small children found it much better to sit together and take care of the children together during a church service. And so they started sitting in the two back rows, I remember, of the church. And that was an issue. That was an issue. The TV set was an issue. The plain dress, the cape was an issue. And I won't go on with any more because I think you understand what I mean. That's what that service was about when the bishop came to the church that morning. I lived practically across the street from the Lidditz Mennonite Church. That's where I was born and grew up. Just a few doors down on the opposite side of the street. And we walked to church every Sunday. And I was very close to my church. I mean, I had many good friends, and it was not an easy thing for me to leave. That was a hard thing for me to leave. Everyone knows that the church, the main group that started the Nessville Mennonite Church came from East Chestnut Street.
Herb and me were quite excited when we heard about this new little group that was starting from East Chestnut Street Church. And we hadn't gone there before, but had heard about it through other people that Herb knew a lot of people and asked about it, because we had gone to Monterey Church for a while, but that was so far away, and we're looking for something else that would be a little closer, because we lived on a farm. He often would have to go milk his cows first before we can get going to church. So we hadn't been married even a year, and we're hunting this type of church that we heard was going to be alive.
And at that time, there were quite a few people that left the Lidditz Church at that time, but I think it was only a few of us that went to Nessville.
And so we found out somehow when the first service was. When we went there, it was something. They seemed so happy and excited, and we just were wondering what's going on.
Yes, well, it was really interesting because I remember very clearly that with the group that we had that started the church, there were many, many experienced church leaders, such as Sunday school teachers.
Bertha Rank, I want to mention her name. She was so important to me. Those years that we were there, she was such a good teacher, and she would come and teach the adult ladies.
Choristers. We had Dave Landis, who was our first music director, and he was a great music director his entire life.
Dave Landis was always such a good singer and was in charge, I guess, and he let them right off. So we really liked that, and Herb always likes to sing, so he liked that too.
We had all kinds of Sunday school teachers, choristers, and my nephew told me that he was 11 years old then. That was my oldest son. And he told me that he remembers there was a rotating list of men that signed their names to take care of the Sunday morning service, and until Morris Landis was put in as the pastor. Mm-hmm.
And most of the men who I remember that were there, Luke Brubakers and Ammon Kaufman and David and Morris Landis and Ross Goldfuses. And so these men stood up and gave testimonies of and thank God for supplying this church for them to use. And one would just pop up and the next one would cut up. And we thought, oh my goodness, this is something. And so then they had so much joy. We had joy too, that they were following the Spirit, and they felt they were. The Spirit's direction, and not man-made rules like what they came from, because they just said, we want to do what the Spirit tells us, and not things that we have to dress a certain way and some other things. So we kind of kept some of the old things that right away we could sit together. But you know, in the other churches, the men would be on one side and the women on the other side. Well, the people that were from Lancaster, they always did. Okay. But I came from Franconia Conference, and ours wasn't as strict, okay. And it was up to us just to wear them for services. Okay. So I kept that, but I felt that was important. Yeah. So it took a while for some of these things to go out.
Yeah, I do not remember the covering being an issue, even in the little brick church. It was up to each individual. As far as I can remember, it was up to each individual as to what they wanted to do. Nobody was told what to do about the covering. It was up to each individual. And the plain dress faded away. Mm-hmm. Jewelry was, yes, there was some a problem there about wedding rings in the beginning, but that was just in the beginning. Mm-hmm.
So some of these things carried over, and it took maybe a couple months till things changed. Mm-hmm. That after a while, people wanted to sit with their families, and they sat together, and after a while, it was nothing. And then sometimes we'd stand up to pray, and that kind of came out. We didn't have to always kneel. So all these really strict things that we were used to, finally, it took a few months and maybe a year for some of those to change. So they were just joy. They couldn't nearly have jumped up and down. I don't remember all that, but I just know I got that feeling. And there was a lot of singing.
Oh, we had good singing, very good singing. And they arranged, they just, Sunday school teachers were teaching where they came from, and they just continued teaching right there, and it was
we'd sing songs and be loud, and there was a lot of out loud praying. People would stand up and just pray what they felt. So that was really a great time for that first service. I was so glad to be there. And we felt that's just going to have to be where we want to go.
There just didn't seem to be problems that were that big. And she said she remembers the Sunday school classes with the green curtains that you pulled. She said she remembers green curtains that you pulled. And then in the summertime, a lot of classes went out under the trees. And it was so nice to have picnics out there in the summertime after the church service. And all I can say is the little brick church on Buke Avenue means to me a wonderful family. It was a wonderful family, and after losing all my friends at Lidditz, everyone accepted everyone else. There were, at least with my age group, there were no problems. We got along just fine, and we enjoyed it very much.